What if the greatest spiritual revolution of our century wasn't unfolding in the West or even in the spotlight, but in silence, in secrecy, and in one of the most tightly controlled societies on earth? What if, behind walls of censorship and surveillance, a faith long thought foreign is quietly taking root, burning steadily like a candle hidden in the wind? While much of the world looks to China for its economic might and political influence, few notice a deeper transformation underway: the unexpected and powerful resurgence of Catholicism. It is not growing through mass campaigns or government support. It is flourishing in whispers, in classrooms and kitchens, in secret chapels and remote villages. In a country where belief often comes at a cost, Catholicism is not merely surviving, it is thriving. This is not a story about numbers. It is a story about souls, about professors who find Christ in Gregorian chant, about farmers who pass the rosary to their children by moonlight, about a new generation quietly choosing faith over fear. To understand why Catholicism is booming in China, we must look beyond the headlines, into the shadows, into the silence, and into the hearts of those who have chosen to believe when belief is hardest. This is their story. This is the story of a church that refuses to die. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to support the channel. What if one of the greatest spiritual awakenings of our time wasn't happening in the spotlight, but in silence? In a nation where Confucian values once defined moral life, and where government control still looms over matters of faith, something remarkable is quietly taking shape. Catholicism, far from vanishing, is quietly flourishing. It moves like a protected flame in a storm, hidden but fiercely guarded by hands that refuse to let it die. Despite decades of suppression, intimidation, and silence, a wave of faith is quietly sweeping through China. It lives in the hearts of young students searching for meaning, whispers through small rural chapels, and persists in underground churches that remain steadfastly connected to Rome. This is not a story about loud revivals or public rallies. It's about quiet resistance, resilient hope, and deeply personal encounters with the divine. To understand why Catholicism is growing so steadily in China, we need to look at the long and layered history of Christianity in the region. Catholicism first reached China in the 1200s with early missionaries, but it was in the late 16th century that it began to deeply take root. The Jesuit priest Matteo Ricci stands out as a symbol of this mission's unique approach. Instead of trying to dominate the culture, Ricci immersed himself in it. He mastered the Chinese language, studied Confucian philosophy, and developed sincere relationships with scholars and officials. His goal wasn't to impose Western ideas, but to harmonize Christian truth with Chinese wisdom. He succeeded in gaining rare access to the Ming dynasty's imperial court, setting the stage for a respectful dialogue between East and West. However, this promising beginning soon met with political storms. As European colonial powers expanded in Asia, Chinese authorities began to associate all Christian missions, including Catholic ones, with foreign control. This suspicion intensified after the Opium Wars and the arrival of unequal treaties. Christianity came to be seen by many not as a faith of peace, but as a symbol of Western aggression. The greatest test came in 1949 with the rise of communist rule. The new government moved swiftly to eliminate independent religious influence. The Catholic Church was forcibly split. In place of Vatican-approved leadership, the state created the Chinese Patriotic Catholic Association, CPCA, which promoted a Sinicized version of Catholicism, cut off from the Pope and international church. Thousands of priests, nuns, and lay believers refused to accept this version of the faith and went underground. Many paid a heavy price: arrest, surveillance, exile, or worse. This division between the state church and the underground church remains one of the most painful tensions in Chinese Catholicism today. In 2018, the Vatican and China signed an agreement to jointly appoint bishops in an effort to ease the conflict. While some praised the move as a step toward healing and cooperation, others feared it compromised the church's spiritual integrity. The debate continues, but one thing is clear: Catholicism in China has not disappeared. It has endured and grown stronger in unexpected ways. Across both urban and rural landscapes, More and more Chinese citizens are embracing the Church's message of dignity, hope, and eternal purpose. Many speak of an inner emptiness that the dominant ideologies cannot satisfy. They describe Catholicism as offering a kind of moral clarity, sacred beauty, and peace that feels rare and real. In a world shaped by ambition and control, the quiet appeal of faith is deeply attractive. A particularly powerful sign of this resurgence is the growing number of young people and intellectuals exploring and often converting to the faith. In China's rapidly changing society, where worth is often measured by success, competition, and material gain, there is a growing hunger for something deeper. Many young people are asking, who am I beyond my achievements? What does my life mean? Why do I feel so spiritually restless? Catholicism speaks to those longings. It doesn't just offer doctrine, it offers a worldview grounded in purpose, forgiveness, and the sacredness of every soul. The Church's rich traditions, from its rituals to its theological depth, present an anchor in a world that feels increasingly fragmented. The sacred beauty of the Catholic liturgy, its reverent silence, meaningful gestures, and ancient chants, offers an antidote to the constant noise of modern life. For those exhausted by endless consumerism, Catholicism becomes not just a religion, but a refuge for the soul. Even in a society where religious expression is limited, Catholic schools and learning centers, though few, play an outsized role in awakening spiritual curiosity. Their reputation for excellence, discipline, and moral values draws students from all backgrounds. Many who begin with simple curiosity end up experiencing a deep spiritual transformation. For intellectuals, scientists, writers, teachers, and artists, the Church offers more than faith. It offers a robust intellectual tradition stretching from St. Augustine to St. Thomas Aquinas to St. John Paul II. This tradition bridges reason and belief, conscience and logic, inspiring those who once thought religion and intellect couldn't coexist. In fact, it is this very synthesis that attracts so many thinkers, a way to believe that does not bypass the mind, but fulfills it. This movement is not about mass conversions or public campaigns. It unfolds in private conversations, quiet readings, moments of prayer, and personal witness. It is not loud, but it is real, and it is growing. In the next section, we'll explore the deeply personal testimonies of conversion. Stories that reveal how curiosity leads to conviction and how ordinary lives in modern China are being quietly transformed by the extraordinary power of faith. He didn't find the Church through lectures or theological arguments, but through beauty. A professor immersed in classical music stumbled upon Gregorian chant almost by accident. The solemn, haunting tones echoed through his soul in a way that academic theories never could. Something ancient and holy resonated within him, an awakening that no textbook had sparked. Drawn by this inexplicable pull, he turned to the writings of the early Church and soon found himself lost in the Confessions of St. Augustine. Each page revealed a kindred spirit, someone who, centuries earlier, had wrestled with the same restlessness and thirst for meaning. What began as an intellectual curiosity quickly became a spiritual encounter that changed the course of his life. Far from the bustling cities, in the quiet countryside, a modest family was struggling through personal hardship. During their lowest point, they crossed paths with a discreet underground priest whose compassion spoke louder than sermons. Without fanfare or formal ceremony, the priest baptized their child in secret, an act of courage and mercy that touched the deepest corners of their hearts. That single moment, hidden from the world's eyes, became the gateway to a new spiritual life. In a society that often prizes conformity and control, these acts of personal faith and risk stand out as profound and deeply moving. Stories like these are multiplying across China, not because of pressure, social obligation, or reward, but because of a genuine hunger for truth. People are discovering the gospel not through grand cathedrals or crusades, but in moments of quiet conviction. For many, embracing Catholicism means accepting hardship, strained family ties, constant surveillance, or even the risk of persecution. Yet rather than deterring them, this suffering strengthens their commitment. Each year during the Easter Vigil, new believers are baptized, often adults, within hidden chapels or makeshift sanctuaries lit only by candles and silent devotion. These baptisms are not just rituals, they are declarations of love and loyalty in the face of fear. What makes this movement even more remarkable is how active these new Catholics become. They are not content to merely attend Mass. Many initiate prayer circles, organize scripture studies, and guide others who are beginning their journey of faith. Without public platforms or official recognition, they become evangelizers in the truest sense, not preaching with microphones but with mercy, not commanding with power but walking with presence. Their witness is simple and clear: lives transformed by grace. Outside the cities, in villages nestled among farmland and hills, Catholicism has quietly taken root. Here, faith is woven into the fabric of daily life. In some areas, the tradition of the faith dates back to 19th century missionary encounters, and while church buildings may be scarce, the spirit of the church is very much alive. It lives in the whispered prayers of elderly women, in kitchen rosaries lit by lantern light, and in elderly men passing on catechism to younger generations. Often lacking access to priests or religious resources, these communities draw upon memory, tradition, and a deeply internalized sense of the sacred. Masses are held in secret, often rotating between homes to avoid detection. Prayer gatherings are timed with the rhythms of agricultural life, before planting, after harvest, embedding the gospel into the land itself. This isn't just perseverance, it's spiritual resilience. These believers aren't just holding on, they're shaping a form of Catholicism that is rugged, rooted, and deeply local, built on sacrifice, not spectacle. Equally powerful is the growing embrace of Catholicism among China's ethnic minorities, such as the Miao, Yi, and Mongol peoples. Often left out of national narratives, these communities have found in the gospel something profoundly affirming, a message of dignity, mercy, and shared humanity that crosses cultural and historical boundaries. Through pastoral outreach, translation efforts, and the patient testimony of local believers, Christianity has slowly woven itself into the traditions of these groups. The result is not the erasure of identity, but the enrichment of it, an integration of faith with language, song, and cultural memory. In these remote and often forgotten corners of China, there are no grand religious campaigns. What you find instead is quiet faith passed from hand to hand, home to home. Faith that survives not because it is easy, but because it is true. Even under a heavy hand of state surveillance, with laws that limit public gatherings and technology that censors religious content, Chinese Catholics continue to adapt and flourish. In urban areas where scrutiny is most intense, small groups of lay believers gather in apartments, coffee shops, or online forums to read scripture, pray, and support one another. These meetings are spiritual lifelines. They preserve not just Catholic teaching, but the profound sense of communion that binds the global church. Meanwhile, in the countryside, long-standing communal ties provide a different kind of strength. Entire villages might gather in secret for midnight liturgies or rotate masses among homes to avoid detection. Mobile phones and live streams have even transformed living rooms into sacred spaces, altars of grace shared by families who cannot attend official churches. Meanwhile, in the countryside, long-standing communal ties provide a different kind of strength. Entire villages might gather in secret for midnight liturgies or rotate masses among homes to avoid detection. Mobile phones and live streams have even transformed living rooms into sacred spaces, altars of grace shared by families who cannot attend official churches, live out their faith beyond worship. Business owners quietly incorporate Christian ethics into their work. Local groups offer acts of charity or help others in need without drawing attention. Their evangelization is subtle but consistent, acts of kindness, integrity, and love that ripple through society. This quiet creativity is not defiance, it's discipleship. In remote towns and countryside hamlets scattered across China, where power lines give way to star-strewn skies, entire Catholic communities gather in whispered secrecy to celebrate the sacred mysteries of the Mass. These gatherings are rarely held in fixed chapels, too dangerous. Instead, homes rotate like chapters in an unwritten gospel. One night in a kitchen, the next in a barn, and sometimes outdoors beneath the hush of midnight trees. The liturgy here unfolds with reverence and risk, becoming more than worship. It is a declaration of perseverance under pressure, a communion of souls who have chosen Christ in silence and shadow. Smartphones glow in the dark not with entertainment, but with live-streamed masses from overseas. Altars of grace broadcast from afar into living rooms turned sanctuaries. Old phones become vessels of liturgical life. In these makeshift domestic churches, the ordinary becomes sacred. A wooden stool becomes a tabernacle, a candle a sanctuary lamp, a whisper a hymn of defiance. But Catholic life in China is not confined to the liturgy. Faith flows into daily existence in subtle but powerful ways. Christian entrepreneurs quietly incorporate gospel values into how they treat their employees and conduct their businesses, with fairness, compassion, and integrity. Across cities and provinces, lay movements operate like spiritual underground railways, offering acts of mercy, organizing charitable outreach, mentoring the young, and caring for the elderly, all without drawing unwanted attention. Their lives embody the Beatitudes, not in theory, but in practice, not through dramatic confrontation, but by a patient, steady fidelity. Amid this quiet resistance stands a singular beacon, the Marian Shrine of Our Lady of Sheshan, perched on a mountain slope outside Shanghai. Though official oversight casts a long shadow over its existence, pilgrims return year after year, climbing its holy hill with both determination and devotion. The journey is often undertaken in silence or secrecy, yet the prayers they carry echo far beyond the mountain. Some pray for loved ones, others for healing, but all carry a shared longing for the freedom to worship and for the future of the church in their homeland. Sheshan has become more than a physical place. It is a symbol of defiant faith, where devotion refuses to be silenced, and where the Chinese church quietly finds its heart. Meanwhile, beyond China's borders, a new chapter of Chinese Catholicism is beginning to unfold. As international eyes turn increasingly toward the East, a spiritual movement is quietly gaining momentum, often overlooked by headlines focused on politics and control. But beneath those narratives, something deeper is taking place. Chinese Catholics are stepping into global roles, not as spectators, but as contributors to the universal church. Though official statistics remain uncertain due to the presence of unregistered believers, what is undeniable is the growth not only in numbers but in depth, conviction, and global integration. Vocations to the priesthood and religious life are slowly on the rise. Young men and women, inspired by the quiet heroism of their parents, parish mentors, or local saints, are discerning vocations despite the obstacles. Their formation rarely takes place in formal seminaries. Often it happens in borrowed libraries, hidden study circles, or through correspondence with Catholic institutions abroad. But what emerges is not shallow faith. It is faith forged under pressure, sacrificial, disciplined, and authentic. This new generation of Chinese Catholics is not staying hidden. Many are pursuing theological education in Rome, Manila, the United States, or Latin America. They are attending World Youth Day, joining international religious orders, and participating in intercontinental missionary outreach. They come with humility, not prestige, with quiet strength, not ambition, but their presence is already reshaping how the world understands Christianity in China. These are not converts waiting to be guided. They are missionaries in their own right. Their witness comes not from comfort, but from conviction, not from ease, but from endurance. And increasingly, analysts and church leaders are asking a daring question. Could China, long seen as mission territory, become a new center of missionary sending? As the country exports industry and innovation across the globe, might it also send forth a new generation of priests, sisters, lay leaders, and apostles whose faith has been refined in silence and cemented in sacrifice? If so, their message won't come through megaphones or media platforms. It will come through lived example, through stories of young people who prayed under surveillance, of parents who baptized their children behind locked doors, of elderly converts who never saw a cathedral, yet understood the heartbeat of the church. Their testimony will be quiet, but unmistakable, that even in the hardest conditions, the gospel is not only surviving, it is blooming. This movement is not measured by membership charts or media coverage. Its strength lies in something less visible but more enduring, the courage to believe when belief costs something. In a culture shaped by control, surveillance, and secular distractions, more and more are choosing the path of resistance, not through rebellion, but through worship, not by breaking away, but by digging deeper. Faith in China is not loud, but it is alive. It doesn't boast, but it builds. And behind each act of devotion lies a simple but revolutionary decision: to choose Christ, to walk with the Church, and to trust that in every corner of the world, even in hidden places, grace is still at work. In a society that often rewards obedience and uniformity, a quiet revolution is unfolding. Not in the public square, but in the stillness of private lives. It is a revolution not marked by slogans or protests, but by devotion, by a decision to live for something eternal, to surrender to someone greater than self. And though it is hidden from view, its roots are deep and spreading. You see it in the humble gestures that go unnoticed by the world. An elderly grandmother, her hands worn by time, gently places a rosary into the palms of her grandchild, transferring not just beads, but a lifeline of faith. In the solitude of a university office, a professor with decades of academic accolades leans in close over the texts of Aquinas, drawn not by duty, but by hunger for truth. In a candlelit cellar, a small group of young believers kneel before the Eucharist, eyes brimming with tears, hearts burning with something they cannot fully explain, only feel. These are not random moments. They are part of a larger, quieter tapestry being woven across China. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to support the channel. This movement does not seek headlines. It doesn't raise its voice to be heard. Instead, it thrives in the language of silence, of fidelity, of quiet courage. It spreads like roots beneath the surface, unseen but unstoppable. Families are being reshaped around living rooms turned into sacred spaces. Youth are rediscovering the sacred in a world full of distraction. Entire communities are being formed not around ideology, but around shared hope, mutual suffering, and trust in something bigger than themselves. It is not an easy faith. It is forged in hardship and tested by fire. But perhaps that is what makes it so unshakable. This is a church that does not rely on privilege or position. It is not built on power, but on perseverance. It has grown in the shadows, watered by tears, protected by grace, and strengthened by the sacrifices of those who may never be named, but will never be forgotten. Its foundations lie in resistance, not political but spiritual. It has been refined in quiet prisons, in whispered prayers behind closed doors, in steadfast worship amid surveillance. It bears the fingerprints of hidden martyrs, those who gave everything for a kingdom not of this world. And from this crucible, a new flame is rising, not one that demands to be seen, but one that refuses to be extinguished. This fire does not come from above, it burns from within. And though the world may not yet recognize its light, those who carry it walk with divine purpose, igniting hearts not by noise but by presence, not by dominance but by depth. It is the fire of a church becoming itself, steadily, silently, faithfully.